Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, How to Build a Business Case for Online Employee Training. My name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I want to go through just a couple of housekeeping items. First, what you should see on your screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is the webinar viewer. So this is where you'll see the content that we're sharing with you today. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is the control panel. So this is where you can join the audio portion of today's webinar, and you can also communicate with us through the question box. The default mode for the control panel is for it to collapse. If you want to open the control panel back up, simply click the orange box with the white arrow in it, and it'll expand for you. All of today's attendees are in listen-only mode. You can join the audio portion of today's webinar either through the teleconference line, or you can also listen through your speakers. If you're going to listen through your speakers, I recommend either using a pair of headphones or a headset to get the best audio quality. I like to keep things pretty informal, so if you have any questions or discussion points, feel free to send those over through the question box that's located within the control panel. I like to weave the questions in as it relates to what we're discussing in the webinar, and then I'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A. I am recording the webinar today, so I'll make a link to the webinar recording as well as the slides and follow-up information available at the end of I'll email out all of this within 24 hours from today. I've done this a million times, and I somehow got myself caught up on that. I'll also post everything up on our blog after today's session, so that's bizlibrary.com/bizblog. Again, I also put a link to the slides in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Happy to say that today's session has been approved for 1 hour CE credit for all of you HR professionals attending. I'll make a link to the completion certificate available at the end of today's webinar, and I'll also send out a link to the completion certificate in that follow-up email that you'll receive within 24 hours. If you'd like more information on certification or recertification, I encourage you to visit hrci.org. The most important thing to record is the activity ID number or the program ID number. Again, my name is Jessica. I'm on the marketing team with BizLibrary. I graduated from the University of Missouri, Columbia. I've been working in the training and development industry now for about 5 years. Very active in social media, so I tweet on behalf of BizLibrary at BizLibrary and also at my own account at Jess L. Petrie. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, so I like to share a lot of articles and discussions around training and development, marketing, and human resources. So if you're on either of those social networks, would love it if you'd reach out and connect. Presenting with us today is Chris Osborne. Chris is the VP of Marketing for BizLibrary. He's also worked in a consulting capacity with a Paris-based leadership development consulting firm where he helped organizations design and implement leadership and executive development programs. He's been performing learning, development, and training functions formally since 2000 and informally for organizations since 1987. Prior to Chris's move into the business sector, he practiced law in the areas of labor, employment, and business litigation for over 12 years. He graduated from WashU School of Law with honors in 1987. Chris is also active in social media, so you can find him on Twitter at Chris Osborne, STL, and he's also active on LinkedIn. So I'm sure you'd love it if you'd reach out and connect as well. Just to give you a little bit of background on BizLibrary, BizLibrary is a leading provider of online employee training and e-learning solutions. The award-winning content library contains more than 7,000 online employee training videos covering every business topic, so things like communication skills, leadership and management, sales and customer service, compliance training, desktop computer skills, and more. Additionally, BizLibrary's LMS and social learning technology platform help HR and training leaders improve and manage employee learning. All right, so enough about us. I have 2 quick poll questions for today, so you should see them pop up on your screen in just a moment. So this first one is, the most common objection from senior executives about learning initiatives is, would you say it's training and development does not impact the bottom line, the cost of training is more than the benefit, things are fine the way that they are, or something else?
Hey Jess, how you doing?
Hey Chris, I'm great. How are you? Glad to be back from our little break for Thanksgiving. It actually seemed like it was kind of a long break, but
well, we didn't do a webinar last week, so
yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's why.
We had a nice break.
Yeah.
So were you? It was great. We had a wonderful holiday. I hope everybody on the call did too. It's one of my favorite holidays. You get a chance to hang out with family, and it was just really good. And we just get to jump right into this very meaty webinar right out of the chute, this business guide. This is one of our more interesting webinars, I think. We don't always have real big crowds for this one, but I think this is a really important subject that a lot of learning and development professionals, I know I struggled with this for years and years and years, so I always enjoy the audience questions and answers in this session. It's always interesting to see what pushback and feedback and what the questions are in this session.
Yep, I completely agree. All right, it looks like we've got a decent percentage. We'll go ahead and close out the poll, and then we'll share the results and then move on to the next one. But it looks like we've got 50% said the cost of training is more than the benefit. 21%, which is a pretty large percentage, said something else. So we're missing something. So let us know through chat, or we'd appreciate it if you let us know through chat what that is. 17% said training and development doesn't impact the bottom line, and then 13% said things are fine the way that they are.
Well, in each one of these choices, we address head-on in today's session. And if you think about that, 2/3, 67% doesn't impact the bottom line. The cost of the training is more than the benefit. And that really gets at the heart of building an effective business case. And then things are fine the way they are. That gets to, the biggest competitor that we face in the marketplace is the status quo, no change. And we're going to talk about that as part of the business case too here in just a little bit. And Jessica's right. There's something else. Let us know what that is. I'd love to hear what that is.
Yeah, a few have added time and resources. Being faced with billable hours, so working in an environment where you have billable hours, you can't really commit time to that. Learning time impacts the revenue. So those are something else that attendees shared with us. All right, so continue to send that in. Again, we like to keep things informal, so we love feedback, questions, engagement. Makes it a more fun webinar. So this next poll question is, in your organization, what are the biggest challenges with change? So many times, new learning and development initiatives really represent a big change in your organization, so both culturally and just kind of the way things work. So what's your biggest challenge with that? And recognize it could be a combination of these things, but what would you say is the biggest? A, timing, this isn't just a good time. B, budget, lack of senior leadership support, lack of employee buy-in or participation, or again, something else.
Interesting. These responses are coming in pretty even. That's interesting. It's not much on something else this time. Looks like we got the 4 biggest ones this time.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and close it out. Share the results. It looks like we've got 31% said lack of employee buy-in or participation. 28% said timing. This isn't a good time. 22% budget. 16% lack of senior leadership support, and 3% something else.
I'm going to tackle the timing one first. If you're waiting for a good time to take on a big change project, there's never a good time for that. It's just never going to happen. So the timing's just never good for that. So anyway, but the lack of employee buy-in or participation, that's a common one. So the fact that nearly 1 in 3 said that doesn't surprise me in the least little bit. But there are ways to get around that, and a big piece of that is getting that senior leadership support, getting them to really, really get engaged with you in your change programs, particularly when it comes to training. And that's a big part of what today's topic is about. So good stuff.
Yeah, so there are 5 core elements of a business case that we're going to talk about today. So Chris, I'll let you run us through what we'll cover for today, and then you'll keep going. I'll pass the ball over if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all ready for it. So.
All right, cool.
All right, let's see here. You know what? I said I was ready. Let me move. I'm just getting used to using 2 screens again, so let's see here. There we go. And let's do, hopefully that's the slide that you see. Is that right?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right. Great. I love it when technology works for me. It doesn't always sometimes. Okay, so if you go out and do research about the elements of a business case, you're going to find a number of really excellent resources in the marketplace. Most of them are going to revolve around these 5 elements. And most of them, and the best thought leadership that I could find, tell you to build a business case in this order as well, that you need to address things, in a very systematic way, which I agree with. I think in order to make an effective business case, you really do have to build a foundation, go through the cause-effect analysis, explain how you're going to measure the impact of each element of your case, build a case for making the change, which is the risk of the status quo, and ensure that you've got an appropriate level of alignment with your organization's goals. And what we're talking about, obviously, is a training and development program. And if you step back and think, just big picture for just a second, at its core, employee development is all about change, because we're trying to help employees go from one level of performance, the current level, to a desired level of performance. We're helping them change. We're helping them improve. And this ultimately, no matter how else we want to cast it, is about change. We're trying to help our organization change, move from one level of performance to another. Teams improve. Improvement is about change. For employees, it's about change. So that's really what this all comes down to on many, many levels. And in order to make this work, we have to build an effective business case. So this goes beyond the Kirkpatrick Phillips 5 levels of training ROI. We are going to talk about that a little bit as we go through this, but I want to make it clear that we are distinguishing a business case, building a business case, from a pure ROI approach. And we're going to get to that as we get into today's session. And Jessica has a really, really good way of framing that. I'm going to have her give you her framework for it when we get to that, because she does a great job of explaining it. So here are the 5 elements. It's the scenario analysis, and I have a very specific way I want you to talk about that. We're going to talk about cause-effect analysis, where you have specific statements around each benefit that you expect. Then KPI, key performance indicators for each benefit. So in other words, here's what success will look like, but here's how we're going to know we've been successful. And then the risks of the status quo, and then, of course, alignment. And you also have to anticipate and overcome the most common objections from your senior leaders, which is part of the reason we asked that poll question. Effective communication to senior leaders sometimes requires us to do a little anticipating. We typically know what they're looking for and what they're wanting to see, so let's get out ahead of that just a little bit. This is a chart that we reproduced from an article that appeared in CLO magazine back in December of 2010. And I haven't seen anything that tells me that much has changed in this. The article was called How Executives View Learning Metrics, and it was written by Patty and Jack Phillips of Kirkpatrick Phillips. And in the first column, this is how executives rank. This is a forced rank. This is how executives ranked elements of learning programs in terms of importance, what the measure was. And in that learning evaluation model, it's the Kirkpatrick Phillips model. We provided some examples for you. And then in the far right-hand column, this is the number of organizations as of 2010 that we're currently measuring those at those levels. And by the way, that hasn't changed much. We haven't seen much improvement in these areas. But look at what's number 1. Executives want to see the impact, and that's the Kirkpatrick level 4. They want to see the business impact. Only 8% of organizations were getting there. And number 2 was value. That's the Phillips level 5. That's what he added to the Kirkpatrick model, and only 4% of organizations were getting there. Executives thought activity was the 6th most important. It's not even on the Kirkpatrick Phillips measurement, and 94% of organizations were measuring that. So there was this huge disconnect, and this disconnect continues today, by the way, between the way a lot of traditional learning and development organizations measure learning programs and think about how to communicate the value of training to their organization and what executives want to see. And we have to shift our thinking, and we have to shift our thinking and our vocabulary in order to effectively communicate to the C-suite. You know, Jessica mentioned earlier in my background that I teach graduate school at Washington University, and it's a common frustration communicated to me by HR practitioners that, well, we're not treated as strategic partners in our organization. And it's largely because many HR practitioners and many learning and development practitioners don't use a strategic vocabulary when they talk about their contributions to the organization. And we have to shift that. So when we think about employee development and employee training, we know, and it's not even open for debate, we know that when our employees have higher levels of skill, that they communicate better, that they solve problems better, that they're able to work more effectively better, that they collaborate better, that we're going to see these business benefits. And this is some data produced by Burson by Deloitte that says that organizations with strong learning cultures significantly outperform their peers. They're more innovative, 46% more likely to be first to market. They're more productive, 37%. They have better customer service scores. They produce 26% better quality products. They're 58% more prepared to meet future demand, and they're 17% more profitable. We know this. This isn't up for debate. In our world, and in those of us that are passionate about this space, we've known this our entire careers. So what we have to do is transfer this passion and this knowledge, this intuition, this intuitive knowledge, what we know happens. We have to be able to translate that into these types of metrics and into this vocabulary, because CEOs and CFOs get this. If we can go to a CFO and say, if we adopt this leadership development program, our organization is going to be 10% more profitable because these behaviors are going to improve, and that's going to help us do these. That becomes persuasive. And that is strategic, and that's how we get to the C-suite. That's how we get to that table. That's how we become engaged with our organizations at that level, and we frequently don't get there. It's largely because we don't gravitate naturally to that type of thinking and that type of analysis. Jessica, there's a great comment that you just posted. I love this.
Yeah, so great ad from Myra. So training has to be seen as situational based. Training is an event, learning is a process. Manage the event, but improve the process. When you do that, you get stronger buy-ins. So I could see that as like, you know, one of those inspirational LinkedIn posts. That's a great comment.
It is. It's perfect. Maya, great comment. All right, so let's go through each of these elements. We're going to talk about scenario analysis, and it really is kind of what it sounds like. You're going to talk about, you know, worst case scenario, and I've got a definite way of approaching this I want to talk to you about. Cause-effect analysis. Now, this is really where you're going to really be able to talk about the specific benefits that you anticipate from your employee development program. Then you're going to have the KPIs for each benefit. So think of it this way. Here's a scenario analysis. In other words, we're going to define success. This is what we think it's going to look like. Here's all the elements of success. That's the cause effect. And KPIs, here's how we're going to know we've been successful. Okay, so that's the first three pieces. That's the description of success and the measurement. And then the fourth piece is, well, if we don't do this, these are the risks. And then the fifth piece is an alignment with organizational goals. Okay, so I want to start, however, with the risks of the status quo. And I recognize this is the fourth of the 5 elements of the business case, but frequently this is an important place to begin because, as I said earlier, our biggest competition is this. We frequently work with organizations for weeks and months, and then they end up deciding, well, we're just going to stick with what we've been doing. We're not going to do anything. And it's kind of sad because they don't recognize the risks that they run by just being static. And for us, for those of us that are passionate about training and development, we recognize that there are many risks associated with not improving the impact and the velocity of our employee training. So we have to start to really we have to think about this very carefully, but we have to think about it not in terms of, well, wouldn't it be great if we could do these 2 things better? Wouldn't it be great if we had sales training? Wouldn't it be great if we have to link the training that we are proposing, the program that we are developing, to specific business risks. So what could happen to the company's bottom line if we remain static? What could happen to our customer base or our market share? Our competitors are more innovative than us. We need to focus on this. Are there future costs that we could avoid if we make this investment today? What are the risks of the status quo? Jessica, we have a really good, well, I don't know if it's really good or not, but we wrote an ebook designed to help frame this argument for folks about the status quo. We might want to make that link available to people because it would help frame this thinking for them and hopefully provide some vocabulary for them as they begin to kind of think through the status quo risks a little bit. But if you start to think carefully about comprehensive training programs, again, here are metrics that you can begin to work your way through in terms of establishing, okay, if we stand still, look at this first one. Employees that have comprehensive training programs have 218% higher income per employee than those with less comprehensive training. Okay, that gets my attention if I'm a CFO. So you're telling me that if I invest X dollars in a complete and comprehensive training program for my employees, we're going to do that? Organizations with comprehensive training programs are 24%, have 24% higher profit margins, and if I'm a publicly traded company, we have a 6% higher shareholder return if the training expenditure increases by $680 per employee. ATD just released, it used to be called ASTD, by the way, but it's now ATD, not to be confused with organizations that have acronym ADHD. But they just released their State of the Industry report, and training expenditures have remained relatively flat, no big changes. Larger organizations have scale. I mean, nothing surprising in it. But, we're seeing organizations, at least the organizations that participated in the survey, which is a fairly small number, by the way, but we're seeing at least the member organizations in ATD that are committed to this, they're seeing some results. And this is really some interesting, data points that you can use. And by the way, you're all going to have access to these slides, so you don't have to, be hunting around for this. But these are really good data points to be able to use to build your, sort of business case and establish sort of the risks of sitting still. Look, we can have a more effective organization by doing things a little differently. Now, for organizations that are contemplating a change in the way you deliver training, we're seeing a significant shift in the marketplace in the way training is delivered. And the ATD report really begins to hammer on this, and we've been seeing this in surveys for the past couple of years, a big shift to video-based training away from heavy reliance upon traditional e-learning, more and more organizations moving to video, particularly short-form video. There are enormous opportunities for improvement in the effectiveness and cost savings with video-based training. I mean, if you think about, BizLibrary is not a real large organization. We have 50-something employees, and we have employees that work in all over the United States, and we're not alone. If you think about, not that many years ago, I remember when telecommuting was really new and weird and unusual, and that's not the case anymore. BizLibrary, again, we're not a big company, but it's routine. We have employees that work all over the United States today. The president of our company works remotely most of the year. I'm working with Dean very closely today. We've had several conversations and web calls from his Florida home office. Jessica and I work closely together. She works in Chicago. This is the norm, and it's the norm for organizations of all sizes. So how in the world could an organization of our size effectively train and educate our employees if we were reliant on instructor-led classroom sessions? It would be virtually impossible for us to do this anymore. We have to rely upon technology. We have to rely upon technology-based training, and it becomes more and more true as organizations get larger and larger, and we become more and more reliant upon employees that are more diversified, more scattered. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just the reality of work today. But we can be more productive, and the simple fact of the matter is online training is incredibly effective. The United States Department of Education issued a study based, as these studies are, on exhaustive levels of research about the benefit and the effectiveness, the efficacy of online training, and it is stunning how effective it is. I mean, it just is amazing, the results that you see. And we've got a couple of resources that you can use to help prove this as well. It works. It absolutely works, particularly when you can deliver short-form video on a mobile platform. So there's a whole range of reasons that a shift, in other words, if your status quo is a continued heavy reliance upon instructor-led training, the risks of continuing to deliver training that way could be rather significant, in that it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast. The quote from the Red Queen, Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, is a great way to kind of summarize it. If you're going to keep up with this market, you're going to keep your millennials engaged, you're going to keep a widely dispersed workforce trained, informed, keep their skills up to date. It's virtually impossible to do with a training program when the status quo looks very traditional. You're going to have to find different ways to do it. Jessica, I added a slide. I don't like to do this to Jessica, but I added one on her. I just love this quote. But the corporate dilemma, what if we train them and they leave? That's the CFO. Then the CEO goes, what if we don't and they stay? And that really does pretty well, I think, summarize in kind of a humorous way the dilemma that we have to kind of think through carefully in terms of sort of the status quo versus, what we're looking at in terms of an investment in training our employees. Well, we can train them and expect that some are going to leave, or we can choose not to train them, and then they're all here and not performing the way we want them to. Okay? Okay, Jessica, anything else on the risks of the status quo?
No, I would just summarize. So when you're looking at overcoming the status quo, you have two layers of it. So first, you have to get buy-in for why change. So why is it important to change? Why is this training and development initiative important for the organization? So that's the first layer. Then the next layer is why does what you're proposing make sense? So why online training or why video-based training? Why is that going to make sense? So we decided to change, so now why online training? So those are the two layers that are going to be included in the overcoming of the status quo.
Good point. Great point. Okay, so let's go to the first element of your business case. Now, these next three elements all fit together very, very closely, and these are really important that you really deal with them in a very methodical way. So we're going to do scenario analysis. Now, I mentioned earlier that when you go out and do your research, you're going to find a lot of great thought leadership on this, and most of them are going to tell you to present your scenario analysis like this, with the most likely results, present a best case scenario, and then a worst case scenario. I am going to tell you right now that my professional advice is not to do it that way. And here's why you shouldn't do it that way. Let's just do a little role play here, Jessica. Let's assume that you're the CEO and I am the Learning and Development Vice President, and I'm coming to you to pitch a training and development program. And I tell you the following. Say, Jessica, we make this investment in training and development, we're going to see our profits increase somewhere between $1.5 million and $2.5 million. Are you in? Are you out? What did you just hear?
$2.5 million, I'm in.
Correct. But what's the most likely result? I'm thinking the most likely results are probably closer to 1.5, maybe 2. 2.5 was the best case scenario, but Jessica just heard 2.5. So when we come back 9 months later or a year later, whenever we report on the results, and we're all proud of ourselves, and we hit 1.9 or $2 million, and we're all excited. Jessica's kind of going, wait. You told me $2.5 million. Trust me, after having spent years negotiating deals and presenting scenarios to a whole range of people in a whole range of different contexts, never do that. Never put the best case scenario out there. Don't do it, because I promise you that is the only number that the CEO and CFO will hear. I promise you that's the only number. Focus on the most likely results. Here's what we believe will happen, and here's why. Now, if the training program only delivers 70% of the results that we anticipate, here's the worst case scenario, which still makes this a good investment. Present the most likely results in the worst case scenario. Do not set yourself up for what's going to inevitably happen, being held accountable for best case scenario when you hit your targets. Just don't do it. Just don't go there. Now, we reproduce this slide this way because the thought leadership, if you go out and do some research, they're going to tell you to do this. And I just wanted to be intellectually honest with you, so when you do go out and do some digging, you're going to see this. But my advice to you is not to do that. So, word to the wise: if you are up for the heat, then go right ahead. But it is not it's not advisable. At least that's my belief. Okay, so cause-effect analysis. All right, so we've got our scenario. We've got our program designed. We've built a program with next generation, best practices, learning strategies. We've got a great content strategy involved. It's going to be a mobile-centric strategy with great content. Everything's going to do what we want it to do. Okay, so now we've got the cause-effect piece. So this is the second step. We want to make sure that we have a clear linkage between the training program, the content, and improvements to employees' ability to do the job at a higher level. Remember what I said a little while ago. The whole idea associated with employee development is improved performance. Okay, so we want to make sure that what we are talking about is improved performance. But it's not just improved performance for the sake of improved performance. We have to have these next two elements there. The improvement has to have a positive impact on the business, and that impact must result in a financial benefit to the company. Okay? So it's three pieces. Training program must improve your employees' abilities to do the job. In other words, we have to improve capacity to perform, improve performance. That improvement must positively impact the business, and that impact must have a financial benefit. It's those three steps. 1, 2, 3. Do not skip one. Okay? Make sure that you have all three in place. And Jessica already included the cartoon that I added. What if we train them and they'll leave? What if we don't and they stay? You have to train them. Got to do this. So companies investing 1,500 or more employees, they're 24% more profitable. I mean, this is, and trust me, $1,500 per employee, when you're talking about the average professional services firm realizing over $100,000 in revenue per employee, that's the average. This is not a massive investment for a significant return, okay? This works. These are not numbers that get, outrageous. So when you're thinking about, the business impact, this is really where we've got to get there. We're looking for those improvements, and this is where we've sometimes, and this is true over the course of my career. Going back to what I said earlier, intuitively, I know that if I can help my colleagues communicate better and solve problems better and work more effectively together, that there's going to be a business impact. I've known that intuitively my entire career. But what I never did when I was charged with organizational development initiatives is I never understood exactly how to take that knowledge and link it very clearly to bottom line impact, because I didn't focus on employee performance. And this is what you have to do. So don't make the mistakes that I did. Focus on employee performance in areas that really can improve outcomes. That's the trick. So your organizational goals are for customer retention. What are the performance areas that need to improve to impact customer retention? That's where you want to focus. If it's increased sales, what are the performance areas that have to improve to increase sales? If it's quality, what are the performance areas that have to improve quality? Whatever the objectives are, that's where you want to focus. And we have to get out of this idea that it's got to be ROI. It's always return on investment. That gets us into the slippery slope of just looking at what it cost us to do this. If we get into expenses, we get into, program cost us this versus this program cost us this, which is the old-fashioned classroom training cost us this, online training cost us this, so we're going to say that is important information to have, but that's not the way to build your business case. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about looking at things like quality, effectiveness, job impact, business results. Jessica, you put this together, and I think you've got a great perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would add is that so many times we focus on, we have to build our ROI, or we have to prove that the training that we're providing is high quality. So we're focused on that. We're focused on a quality mindset rather than really looking at the impact and the results. While, quality is important, it doesn't go far enough, to prove that the training positively impacts the business. So for example, if I created these beautiful slides, I spent so much time and they're just fantastic, but no one learns anything from the slides that are provided, or it's not making an impact on the people that are watching or viewing the slides, then what's the point? If we're so focused on just that, or we're so focused on building the ROI. So you have that ROI in your back pocket. You know that all of your training is quality and that it meets, adult learning theory standards or whatever those standards that you're applying to. You know all that and you have that to support it. But again, like Chris said, that's not necessarily something that you're presenting. You're presenting it with the idea that it's going to make a strategic impact. So it's cost justified enough to show that it's going to make a strategic impact on the organization.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Absolutely spot on. So we've got a very specific example we want to walk you through to really illustrate the point that Jessica just made. So we're going to kind of set up sort of a use case. So this is the value of training on writing skills. One of the things that we hear about all the time, well, it's really hard to measure the impact of improved soft skills training. And that may be true if you focus just on, improved communications or whatever the case may be. But if you're focused on a business impact and looking at the behaviors that drive the outcome, then you have a way to measure the impact of soft skills training. By the way, we just published an ebook that walks you through this, and I think we can provide a link to the new ebook as well. But this is sort of a shorthand version of how to do it. So what we've got is we're trying to reduce the turnaround time on bug fixes from an average of 21 days to 10 days. So because this is going to save us some money. And what we've got is our account representatives are taking in bug reports over the phone, and they're writing up reports and handing them off to the technical team that has to fix them. But the problem is they're not written very well, so they get turned back and forth and back and forth. And so by the time we get them all done, the average is taking 21 days before the bugs get fixed. So with an average of 50 days, that's what it costs us, 50 days, for each bug over 6 months and 1,100 bugs, it's cost us a little over $1.1 million. 80% of the bugs require a return of the written report to the rep for clarification because the rep's writing isn't clear. Okay? So what we're expecting to see, the expected value to be gained, is measured by using the average revenue loss for each day the service is down for customers due to the sloppy or unclear written explanation of bugs to the programmers. So you're looking for a way to measure the impact of soft skills training. Here's a great way to think about it. It's not necessarily, this is written communications, but poor written communications, that behavior has an impact on a specific business objective. In this case, bug fixes. Okay, that's what we're trying to get at. All right, so we have costs associated with this. In human resources, it's going to be $90,000. We've got a couple of HR reps that are going to be dedicated to this. The sales reps that we're going to get involved, it's going to cost $300,000 for a total of $390,000 in terms of time and all of their effort to get this. The impact of this, less than 10% of written reports are returned for rewrites in 6 months after the program. So the average bug fix was reduced from 21 days. We didn't get our target of 10, but we got it down to 12, and the total number of bugs affected was 1,210. So if we look at this, 500 reps times $600 a day per rep, we saved, the total value gained was a little over $500,000, $544,000 on a $390,000 program. So there's business impact. That's how to think about this. This is cost justified. We didn't go into the old-fashioned ROI approach to this. We went straight to business benefit. Here's a business problem that's costing us this much money. Here's a problem we can solve with training, and here's a solution that makes sense. That's how we do it, which gets right to this next point. What are the key performance indicators for each benefit that we expect to see from the training program? So we want to identify the key performance indicator for the business problems we're trying to solve. So what are they going to be, and what will improved performance look like, and how will we know? That's kind of what these first three elements of the business case are about: the scenario analysis, the cause-effect analysis, and the key performance indicators. And that really answers those questions. What will improved performance look like, and how will we know it? When you are focused on those two simple questions, when you're building your training program, you are in a really good place to have an effective business case when you are thinking about it in these elements. What will success look like? What will improved performance look like? That's your scenario analysis and your cause-effect analysis, okay? High-level scenarios and then the benefits. And how will we know it? There's your key performance indicators. So it's two simple questions, three basic elements, and you're right where you want to be. And now you lay that out against the risk of the status quo, so now you got to compare, contrast, and you've got something that you can take to the bank with your C-suite. And now we want to make sure that all of this is aligned with your organization's goals. Now, goal alignment. I don't want you to think that this is sort of this nebulous, theoretical exercise that's done in a strategic planning session where we go, okay, so here's the organizational goals, here's human resources part of it, here's customer service part of it, here's product development's part of it, and so now we're all aligned, you know, go forth and have a successful year, and we'll come back next year and evaluate how we did. That is sort of what you will find in a lot of the traditional textbooks and sort of some of the thought leadership about, you know, cascading goals and alignment. And that's also why 80% of organizations fail to hit their strategic goals, because they approach it just like that. Alignment is something much different. I want you to think about alignment this way. Alignment is a process of continuous adjustment to keep the relative parts of your organization in their correct relative position. Alignment is highly interactive. Alignment is something you're doing all the time. You're adjusting, you're evaluating. Going back, remember those key performance indicators? We know what success, you know, looks like, and here's how we know it. You're constantly evaluating those key performance indicators to see, are we on track, are we off track? If we're off track, how do we get back on track? That's alignment. And when you're constantly evaluating it and constantly making adjustments, you can keep your training program tightly aligned and successfully aligned with helping your organization achieve their goals. Okay, last but not least, we wanted to talk a little bit about these barriers to program adoption, and these barriers can be really significant. You know, some of the things that your chief, you know, your CFO, your CEO are going to ask you, well, will the employee, okay, so we're going to invest in this training program. You made your business case. Jessica, you win, I give, okay, I cry uncle. You're going to get your training program, but I have some questions for you. We do this, we get this online training program, you're going to get all, will the employees use it? Are they going to participate? Okay, well, you got to be prepared for that. You got to make sure that you have your ducks lined up and you can explain that employees will in fact use it. So if you've got a mobile platform, it's a whole range of ways to explain that. What are the costs? What's the value? Hopefully you've got that laid out. Is the learning initiative relevant to our business needs? That's a big one. That's a really big one. Make sure you're prepared to get there. Jessica put this slide together. You're going to have access to this slide, so I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but these are just common areas of resistance that we've run into over the years here at Biz Library. We've got, over a long time, we've worked with thousands of clients, and these are strategies that we've used to, successfully kind of get around these areas of resistance. So these do work. Again, you're going to have an opportunity to review these slides. I want to take just a minute as we get close to wrapping up today to talk about sort of the document, the physical business case. Jessica mentioned earlier that I've taught graduate school, and one of the things I learned and I learned this the hard way, I have to confess. My first class, at first class, you go through and you say, here's what we're going to do, and here's your final. Here's what the final is going to be. It's going to be a paper. And people always go, oh, so what do you expect on the paper? How many pages is that? And I used to go, don't worry about it. We'll talk. But people always obsess and worry about it. And I finally realized, you know what? That's actually kind of a legitimate concern. And as we started to work our way through this presentation, I realized, you know what, we need to explain what a physical business case should look like. So we've laid out the elements. You got these, these 5 elements. So we wanted to take a minute to walk you through physically what one looks like, because not all of us have put them together, and I think this can be pretty helpful. So there are 6 pieces to it, and you start with an executive summary. Now, I'm just going to be real honest with you. Your president of your organization, your CEO, this is probably all they're going to read is the first page, and this is, you want an objective sentence and bullet points on each key element. And you really do have to keep this down to 1 page. That's all you get is 1 page. So you have to, words have to be economical, you have to be succinct and to the point, 3 bullet points on each element, no more, no less. Really have to work hard to make this executive summary exactly that, a strategic summary of the program that you are describing in the rest of the business case. Now, other members of the leadership team and probably assistants to the CEO or CFO may read the rest of the business case, but I don't want you to be disappointed or upset when the CEO and president only reads the executive summary. But that is all they're going to read. It's just the way they are. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing, but it's the reality. So that's just the way it's going to be. However, you write the executive summary last. You wait till everything else is done so you can make the executive summary a true summary of all of the critical pieces of the case. Okay? The second section is your current situation, and this is where you summarize the business challenges that you're addressing and the business goals that you are going to meet with this solution. And then your next section is the proposed solution. This is usually 2 to 3 pages. Now, going back to what we talked about, you've got your scenario description and your cause-effect analysis, okay? And that's what you're trying to get to right here, all right? So explain the solution. Include a simple statement of each expected benefit, and here's where you do your risk assessment of the status quo. All right, so now the next piece is an explanation of the business benefits. And this is where you're going to do a really thorough analysis of the bottom line impact, including the business benefit gains and costs. So this is where you get to the ROI emphasis on business benefits. And then you get to a conclusion, which is a 1-page. And this is where you get to kind of a narrative conclusion. So this is where you can have a little more literary license, okay? So your executives, if they like what they see on the summary, they'll probably go to the conclusion. So that may be it. That may be all you get, okay? But again, 1 page, it's got to be a page. And then you get your supporting material. This is where your data and your research goes. Now, we've got 3 to 4 pages here. You may need a little more than that depending on what you're doing, but the supporting material goes at the end. And I promise you, very few people will look at that, but if it's not there, somebody's going to look for it. Okay? So that's the quote-unquote the business case document in 6 elements. Okay? An executive summary. Let me just go back 1 slide just to review them real quickly. Executive summary, the current situation, the proposed solution, explanation of business benefits, your conclusion, then your supporting materials. Okay, so key takeaways for today. Hopefully, don't get stuck on ROI only. You really have to communicate the cost justification with a real emphasis on the business benefits. That's the strategic impact of your training initiatives. Plan and organize. Understand your current situation with a real emphasis on where you want to be. Know the facts and risks and back it up with data, and communicate how your plan will benefit the overall organizational goals. You do those things, you're in pretty good shape. All right, Jessica, I think we're in pretty good shape on time, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I'm going to open up the question pane and prepare some answers to questions, if that's okay.
Yep, sounds perfect, Chris. So continue to post your questions in the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I shared a lot of links in today's webinar to different resources, so I'll be sure to add those to the blog post this afternoon, so bizlibrary.com/bizblog. I also have 2 additional recommended resources. These come from the BizLibrary collection. Both are just short videos. So this first one is a video that's included in a 4-part series. So it talks about how to execute. So many times you're working on projects, and one of those projects likely is your new training and development program. So it takes you through kind of the pitfalls that can keep you from executing and how to overcome them. And again, it's a 4-part series that'll help you with that. This next one is overcoming or dealing with resistance. So I outlined a few of those things around the barriers of training and development, but this goes through a step-by-step process and really gives you a framework about how to overcome that and the idea of organizational change and that resistance to change. So both are short videos. They're really good. I recommend that you check them out. Again, they're all included in the BizLibrary collection that has more than 7,000 courses, so that's e-learning and video courses, 25 different topic areas, and it's set up to where your employees get unlimited access. So if you want to try the resources I recommended or any of the other resources that are included in the collection, just let me know. I'll put up a poll throughout the question period. You can do a free 30-day trial. All right, so I'll put that poll up. Chris, is there a question you want to get started with first, or do you want me to grab one for you?
Why don't you grab them? Wait a minute. I'm not muted. I wasn't sure if I was still on or not. You've done a good job of getting ahead of me on the questions, so I'll let you pick.
All right, great. So this first one is from Deanne. So she says, getting leadership to make decisions is like pulling teeth. They want to do training, but they're just not willing to implement anything. So how do I get them to act?
Well, isn't that always an issue with leadership? You know, and I wish you could just sort of sometimes like go into leadership meetings and just stand on the table and go, just make a decision. Sometimes it's just great to have people make a decision, even if it's not always the right decision. Sometimes you just want people to act. I totally understand that frustration, and I'm kind of proud to say we don't do that here at BizLibrary. Sometimes maybe we go too fast. We do a little bit too much ready, shoot, aim occasionally. But I'd really rather be in that situation. So how do you get people to act? Well, I think part of the lesson of today's webinar is the value of building an effective business case. You really have to get your mind wrapped around explaining the business impact, the potential business impact of what you're proposing. That's the first piece of it. The other part of it, to be perfectly honest, is to really be able to highlight for your executives the risks of not doing something, the risks of inaction. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have an outdated computer network. What are the risks of sticking with it? Loss of productivity, security risks, you know, there could be a whole range of things. So you have to figure out what those risks are. You may have to involve other managers, other departments, other leaders. I interview them, talk to them, ask them to help you document things. But that really becomes the trick, is to figure out which side of the equation is going to have more leverage and more impact for your leaders. Maybe it's a blend of both, but it all comes down to communicating in a vocabulary and on terms that the C-suite will recognize and understand. Profitability, productivity, time to market, quality. It's those types of bottom line impacts that you're going to have to be able to put in front of them in order to prompt action. So it's going to be a blend of those things. Here's the carrot. So if we move, this is where we could get to, and here's the risks of standing still. If we don't move, you know, the competitors are going to go past us. We're going to lose market share, whatever the case may be. So there isn't any shortcut. There isn't any magic to it. That's how you have to do it.
All right. Looks like we're close on time. Do you want to take one more question, Chris, or want me to wrap up?
Sure, we'll do one more.
One more. All right, so this next one is from Aretha. So how do you suggest launching a brand new training program and learning management system with the most effective and smooth implementation?
Hire Biz Library to help you do this. No, I'm sorry, shameless plug there. But you know, it really gets down to having laid a good foundation for the employee training and development, making sure you've got very visible senior leadership buy-in. That really becomes critical. If you've gotten visible senior leadership buy-in, the rest of it's going to fall into place pretty quickly. It really is going to do that.
Okay, maybe one more question if that's okay. So this one's from John. So executives want training to be developed and be conducted. Immediate managers of SMEs are not willing to make resources available as it impacts their bottom line bonuses. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, that is a really tough question, and it sounds like you've got a compensation plan that is across purposes with organizational goals, so that would be the first thing I would take a look at. The second thing is you're going to have to get your senior executives to lean on those immediate managers of the subject matter experts to compel them to make the subject matter experts available for the training. So it's two pieces, the senior leadership support and perhaps rethink the way people are compensated so that the compensation program doesn't create incentives for behaviors that don't help you.
All right. Great questions, everyone. Thank you so much. For those of you that are attending for HRCI credit, I put a link to the certificate in the chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Just a reminder, I'll also send a follow-up email. In that follow-up email, you'll receive a link to the certificate as well as a link to the webinar recording and the slides. So you should receive that in your inbox around 4 p.m. Central Time today. We hold these webinars every week, so hope you'll consider joining us for a future session. We have another one this week called the 5 Ways to Build a Better Leadership Development Program, and then next week, employee training, my short video gets big results. So again, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for all the great questions, and thank you, Chris, for presenting.
Thanks, everybody. Glad to have you, and hope to see you at a webinar soon.